There's a quiet truth in Buddhism that most people run from. The reason your life feels so heavy isn't because of what happened to you. It's because of how tightly you're still holding on to it. Memories, people, conversations that never ended properly. You keep replaying things that no longer exist, as if thinking about them harder will fix what's already gone. But Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. So what happens when your thoughts are consumed with someone else's silence? You become a prisoner in a cage you built with your own overthinking. 1. People who confuse you are teaching you to rely on yourself. Some people enter your life not to love you, not to stay, not to build anything real with you, but simply to shake your soul awake. They're inconsistent. One moment they speak to you like you're the only person that matters. They give you attention, promises, soft words that make your heart open up again. And just when you start to feel safe, they vanish, cold, distant, quiet. You go home and sit alone replaying their messages, reading between lines that were never written clearly. You wonder, did I do something wrong? But here's the truth you've been avoiding. They didn't disappear because you were unworthy. They disappeared because they were never solid to begin with. In Buddhism, you learn that people are not punishments or rewards, they are teachers. Even the ones who confuse you, even the ones who hurt you with their silence. They show you something about yourself that you haven't healed yet. You keep trying to fix them, understand them, get closer so they can explain what they never had the courage to say. But what if their confusion isn't your puzzle to solve? What if your overthinking is just your soul begging for closure in places that were only meant to be classrooms? You see, these people are mirrors. They reflect all the ways you still rely on others to feel safe. They reflect your need for reassurance, your fear of being abandoned, your old wound of feeling invisible. And they awaken a choice inside you, a choice that will either break you again or rebuild you completely. You can keep chasing their approval, or you can stop and realize your peace has never been their responsibility. It's yours. The people who confuse you, they teach you something powerful, that your energy is sacred, that your heart deserves clarity. That silence is not always mystery sometimes, it's avoidance. So when they disappear, don't chase. Don't over-explain. Don't shrink to fit their uncertainty. Buddhism doesn't teach you to fight people. It teaches you to face yourself. It teaches that awakening doesn't come from love that stays. It often comes from love that walks away without reason, because that's when you finally return to your own soul and say, I choose myself now. And the most powerful healing is when you stop waiting for answers and start becoming the peace you were begging them to give. Because maybe, just maybe, they weren't meant to stay. They were only meant to remind you of everything you forgot you were. 2. Not everyone deserves to be held in your mind. You hold people in your mind like sacred guests. Even when they've already walked out of your life, you think about them when you're trying to sleep. You carry their name in your prayers, even when they stopped saying yours. You replay moments, reread old messages, and try to make sense of why things changed so suddenly. But the truth is, not everyone deserves to be carried like that. Your mind is not a storage room for unfinished stories and people who didn't know how to stay. It's a temple, and what you allow to live there shapes the way you see yourself, your worth, your peace. There are people who didn't value your effort, your softness, or your sincerity, but they still live in your thoughts. Because deep down, you hoped they would come back and realize what they missed. And that's where the pain hides. Not in what they did, but in the space you keep giving them, long after they stopped earning it. In Buddhism, the mind is sacred. It's where suffering begins, and where healing begins too. So when you fill it with the voices of people who left, with the noise of regret, confusion, and imaginary conversations, you're not just overthinking. You're overcrowding the one place that should be your refuge. Ask yourself, why do I still hold on to people who let go of me? Why do I still carry the weight of their absence like it's mine to fix? You don't owe anyone that space. You don't owe memories to people who only gave you half-truths. And you definitely don't owe your peace to someone who traded it for their ego. Let this sink in deeply. Not everyone deserves to live in your head. Not everyone deserves the luxury of your thoughts, especially if they never respected the weight of your silence, your loyalty, or your love. There's a quiet kind of healing that begins the day you realize you don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You just need boundaries, even in your own mind. Buddhism doesn't ask you to hate them. It asks you to release them gently, but completely. And when you do, you'll feel something strange. Not bitterness, not pride, just space. Space to think about yourself again, to feel your own energy again, to live without waiting for someone else to validate your thoughts. You gave them enough. Now, it's time to give your peace the space it always deserved. 3. Healing isn't always quiet, sometimes it's fierce. People think healing is soft, calm, silent, like meditating on a mountain with peaceful music in the background. But real healing? It's not always that graceful. Sometimes, healing is fierce. It's messy. It's loud on the inside. It shakes you in the middle of the night when you thought you were okay. It brings tears out of nowhere, not because you're weak, but because your soul is finally starting to feel again. You think you're broken because you're not calm all the time, because you still cry when you remember them, because you still get angry when you replay how they treated you. But in Buddhism, healing isn't about suppressing pain. It's about sitting with it so deeply that it has no choice but to let go of you. Healing is when you scream into your pillow because no one ever asked how you were really doing. It's when you finally admit, yes, it hurt. Yes, I was confused. Yes, I was pretending to be fine when I was drowning. And that honesty, that raw, shaking honesty, is the doorway to awakening. You've been told to move on, to let go, to stay positive. But no one taught you how to actually feel the pain without letting it destroy you. That's what Buddhism shows you. Not how to run from the fire, but how to sit calmly inside it until it burns away the illusion that you were ever unworthy. Sometimes healing looks like taking deep breaths between panic attacks. Sometimes it's deleting the pictures, then crying because you finally did. Sometimes it's walking away from someone you love, not because you want to, but because staying would only teach you how to abandon yourself. Healing isn't always found in peace. Sometimes it's found in the war you finally stop fighting against yourself. You might think you're falling apart. But what if you're just shedding everything that was never truly yours? Buddhism doesn't say, don't feel. It says, feel completely, but don't drown in what isn't permanent. Because your emotions, they are waves. They rise, they crash, but they always pass. So when it feels loud, when the pain is sharp, when your soul aches in ways you can't explain, don't silence it. That's not weakness. That's healing. That's your spirit finally saying, I'm ready to stop pretending. And when the storm passes, because it always does, you'll realize something unshakable. You didn't need to be calm to heal. You just needed to be real. 4. Overthinking is just a fear disguised as control. You keep thinking and thinking and thinking, long after the moment has passed, long after the words were said, long after they walked away. You replay the tone of their voice, the last message they didn't respond to, the look in their eyes when something shifted but they didn't say anything. And you tell yourself you're just trying to understand, to make sense of what happened, to protect yourself from being hurt again. But the truth is, overthinking isn't about understanding. It's about fear. It's about trying to control pain before it happens. You think if you analyze it enough, you'll be safe next time. If you anticipate every mood swing, every change, every silence, you won't be caught off guard. But Buddhism teaches something different. Control is an illusion, and overthinking is just fear trying to wear a smarter outfit. The fear says, if I let go of this thought, I'll be blindsided again. If I stop replaying this moment, I'll miss something important. If I don't stay alert, I'll lose everything. So you stay trapped in your head, tired, restless, unable to sleep, trying to predict the future based on a version of the past you never even understood fully. But here's the deepest truth. The situation didn't hurt you as much as your constant thinking about it did. The moment happened once, but your mind has forced you to live it 100 times. That's not protection. That's punishment. And you're doing it to yourself. In Buddhism, we are taught, suffering doesn't come from what happens. It comes from how deeply we attach to it afterward. You thought you were solving the problem, but what if the real problem was your refusal to let it go? Because deep down, you want control. You want to know why. You want to know what they meant. You want to know what's going to happen next. But life doesn't offer clarity on demand. It offers peace when you stop trying to force it. Sometimes the silence means it's over. Sometimes the mixed signals are the message. And sometimes the closure you're waiting for is just you deciding to stop giving your energy to what's already left. Your mind is tired because it was never built to carry this much noise. Overthinking is not intelligence. It's fear. It's the fear of being hurt again, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not being enough. But guess what? No amount of thinking will guarantee love. No amount of analyzing will guarantee peace. Only surrender can do that. And surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means finally accepting that you were never in control to begin with. That's when peace begins. When you stop trying to rewrite a story that already ended. When you stop trying to fix what wasn't yours to fix. When you look at your thoughts and say, I see you, I understand you, but I will not let you lead anymore. And in that moment, the fear softens. The thoughts slow down. And for the first time in a long time, you can finally breathe. 5. You can love deeply and still let go with dignity. You loved them. That's not a question. You gave pieces of yourself they never even asked for. Not because you were desperate, but because you believed in what you felt. You stayed when they became distant. You made excuses for their silence. You tried to fill every gap with more love, more presence, more patience, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they'd see your effort and finally match it. But they didn't. And yet, you still wonder if letting go makes you the one who gave up. No. Let this be very clear. You can love someone with your entire soul and still choose to walk away when that love starts breaking you. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is not love. Love is spacious. Love is clarity. Love is mutual. But attachment is when you keep trying to heal someone while you're bleeding. It's when you think holding on longer will somehow prove your worth. It's when you believe that love means staying no matter how much it hurts. But it doesn't. Real love includes self-love. And when you ignore that part, you begin to lose your own reflection while chasing someone who never looked back. You can't force someone to understand the depth of your heart, especially when they're still shallow with their own. You tried. You gave them the benefit of the doubt. You waited. You forgave things that cracked your spirit. You lowered your needs, quieted your pain, made yourself smaller just to make space for them. That wasn't weakness. That was love. But now, the love you need most is your own. Letting go doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you finally realized you were the only one holding everything together. And that's not love. That's survival. So when you walk away, with tears in your eyes, with love still in your heart, with memories that ache but no longer control you, you're not giving up. You're growing up. You're saying, I deserve to be met. I deserve to be understood. I deserve a love that doesn't make me question my worth. In Buddhism, letting go is not a rejection. It's a return. A return to your center. A return to your peace. A return to the truth you buried under someone else's silence. You can love deeply and still let go with dignity, with your head held high, with your heart still soft, with no bitterness, no blame, just the quiet strength of someone who finally chose themselves. And that is the most powerful kind of love there is. 6. You weren't meant to be chosen by everyone. You weren't chosen. And it hurt. You tried to be everything they needed. Patient, understanding, soft, supportive. You gave them parts of yourself that took years to build. And in return, they chose something else. Someone else. Or nothing at all. And you stayed up wondering why. What did I miss? What was wrong with me? Was I too much or not enough? That question has been eating away at your spirit like a slow fire. But here's the truth Buddhism gently teaches us. You weren't meant to be chosen by everyone, because your soul wasn't created to belong everywhere. Some people, they only recognize light after they've lived in darkness. Some people confuse depth with danger. Some people get scared when they feel something real, because it forces them to face everything fake inside themselves. So they walk away, not because you were too little, but because your presence made them feel too much. And that has nothing to do with your worth. Buddhism shows us that suffering often begins when we attach our value to how others receive us. When we forget that rejection is not proof of our inadequacy, it's proof that our path is being redirected, protected, adjusted in silence. You keep chasing people who were never meant to hold your soul. You keep craving attention from those who can barely face their own reflection. You think if you were better, more beautiful, more easygoing, less emotional, then maybe they would have stayed. But the truth is, you could have been perfect, and they still would have left. Not because of your flaws, but because of their fear. Some people leave because they can't carry the weight of sincerity. They're used to shallow, used to half-hearted games, used to love that doesn't require accountability. So when they meet someone like you, someone with a clear heart, someone who loves with depth and intention, they run. not because you're hard to love, but because they never learned how to receive love that doesn't come with conditions. You weren't meant to be understood by everyone. You weren't meant to fit every space, soften every heart, or be chosen in every story. Because the one who's meant for you will see you and not blink, will hear you and not flinch, will feel your depth and still stay. Until then, don't shrink to fit the places you were never meant to enter. You weren't passed over. You were being protected. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize the ones who didn't choose you only made space for something far greater to arrive. And when it does, you'll thank Allah for every rejection that felt like ruin, because now you'll know it was never rejection. It was redirection. 7. The mind that overthinks is often just the heart that was never heard. You keep overthinking. Every word, every silence, every delay in a reply, every shift in tone. You analyze every message like it's a secret code. You go back to old conversations, looking for something you missed. Some clue, some sign, some reason why they changed. You don't want to be obsessive. You don't want to care this much. But your mind won't stop, and you don't know how to silence it. But the truth is, your overthinking isn't just a habit. It's a symptom, a cry, a signal, because sometimes the mind that overthinks is just the heart that was never heard. No one ever sat with you and said, "Tell me everything." No judgment, no rush. I want to understand the way your heart speaks. No one ever looked into your eyes long enough to see the pain hiding behind your smile. No one ever gave you a space so safe that your thoughts didn't have to scream just to be noticed. So now, your thoughts shout. They spiral. They replay. They echo because they never found a home. You're not broken. You're just unheard. And that silence you keep living in, it's not peace. It's loneliness dressed as strength. In Buddhism, we learn that the mind can only rest when the heart feels seen, because thought is not the enemy. Unacknowledged emotion is. You keep overthinking because no one ever taught you how to sit with your feelings without running from them. You were told to calm down. Stop being dramatic. Don't be so sensitive. So you learned to doubt your own feelings. You started translating emotion into logic, and you believed that if you could just think harder, you'd finally feel better. But you won't, because what you need isn't another mental loop. It's a moment of stillness where you finally say to yourself, "I hear you, I believe you, I know it hurt." That's when healing begins. Not when the thoughts stop, but when the heart feels safe enough that it doesn't need to keep using the mind to scream for attention. Your overthinking is your heart's way of begging you to slow down, to stop chasing clarity in people who confused you, to stop trying to solve things that were never meant to be understood. You don't need to explain your pain to anyone anymore. You just need to acknowledge it yourself. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not too much. You're just a soul that has been carrying its truth in silence for far too long. And it's time to finally listen. 8. Enlightenment isn't about floating above pain, it's about walking through it without losing your balance. You thought enlightenment meant becoming untouchable, unbothered, silent in the face of heartbreak. Still, while the world falls apart around you, you thought healing meant nothing could hurt you anymore. That peace was a perfect calm, untouched by pain. But that was never the truth. In Buddhism, enlightenment isn't about escaping pain. It's not about floating above it like you've evolved beyond feeling. It's about walking through the pain, eyes open, heart steady, without losing yourself along the way. You'll still feel grief. You'll still feel loneliness. You'll still have days where the silence stings, where the memory creeps in, where your chest tightens for no reason except that the soul remembers what the mind is trying to forget. But now, you don't run from it. You sit with it. You breathe through it. You let the ache speak, not to destroy you, but to teach you. Because pain isn't the enemy. Attachment is. You were never meant to stop feeling. You were meant to stop clinging to what was never meant to stay. You were meant to stop building your identity around who hurt you, what you lost, who didn't choose you, or how long you suffered in silence. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to shake. You're allowed to collapse on the floor at 2 a.m. and wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. That doesn't make you any less enlightened. It makes you real. It makes you alive. Enlightenment doesn't erase pain. It transforms your relationship with it. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this pain trying to awaken in me?" You stop waiting for the wound to disappear and start understanding that even the wound is part of the path. Because the path isn't straight. It's sacred. It dips, it breaks, it pauses, it twists. But through it all, your balance is not in how still you can stay. It's in how deeply you trust the process. When the world shakes, you don't pretend to be still. You simply choose not to collapse. That is the kind of peace that no one can take away. That is the kind of enlightenment that can sit in fire and still remain whole. So, let this be your reminder. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not failing because you still feel pain. You are walking your path. You are learning how to carry fire in your hands, without burning yourself just to keep others warm. That's not weakness. That's mastery. Because real peace isn't when nothing can hurt you. It's when nothing can break you anymore, not because you stopped feeling, but because you stopped fearing your own depth. And that is enlightenment. You don't need to erase the pain. You just need to stop abandoning yourself every time it returns. Enlightenment was never about escaping what hurt you. It was about learning how to stay with it, without losing who you are. Buddhism won't take your pain away. It will give you the silence to finally understand it. If this touched your soul, like, share, and subscribe for more Buddhist wisdom and deep life reflection. And remember, peace begins the moment you stop arguing with what already is.